Friday. Welcome to our Refuel experience. I am Reverend Carla Johnson. I am normally I have a partner in crime, the Reverend Sean Robinson, but he has abandoned me today. And so it's just me. You're stuck with me. So what I want you to do is we're streaming live from our Facebook page and from YouTube. So take a couple moments, go on and share this post with your friends, start watch parties. We are in for a spectacular treat tonight. We have the pastors of Unity Fellowship Church of Baltimore, pastor, our founding pastor, no one other than the Bishop Harris Thomas, and our senior pastor, the good Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington. They are going to be joining me just in a couple of minutes, but I don't want them to come to a empty room. So you do your part and I'll do mine. I have the guests, so you find us the people to watch us. I see you. Welcome, 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 welcome. Christy, we love you. Thanks for watching. Come on. I know there are more people out there. Why don't you tag your friends? Tag your family members. Let everybody know that Baltimore is ready to refuel. We're here to just love on you all. We are in our Men's Month, Men of Hope, Action, and Love. And so the three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. We see you, Minister Melvin. Good to see you. We are just excited that the men of Unity Fellowship Church of Baltimore have planned a dynamic month for us. Our pastor started it off last week with his message on grow up. We have the good Reverend Corey Taylor this Sunday, and then all the way from Atlanta, the Reverend Marissa Penderman, and then right down in DC, we have Reverend Omar Clark, and then to close us up, the Reverend Sean Robinson will be closing us out. So I want y'all to tell him he need to show up for that. Hey, Ashton. Hey, Sabrina. So again, please share this out. I see you. We're going to bring our pastors on in just a couple of seconds, but I want some more people in the room. Go on and share this out. Again, start some watch parties. We haven't seen them both. We saw them a little bit on screen a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't really had a chance to talk to them. So we will be, again, talking about Black Men Lives Matter. And why is that important? Hey, Reverend Offer. Hey, Game Changer. We see you, Reverend Minister Donnell. So why do Black Men Lives Matter? What's the perspective of our pastors? We'll be talking about voting, COVID-19. We'll be talking, who knows what questions you're going to have for us. Bishop Highland, we see you. Good evening, good evening, good evening. So I think this is enough, people. So without further ado, everyone, Bryce, if you can hear him, he says, hi, everybody. Without further ado, we will bring on our pastors, Bishop Harris Thomas and Reverend Dr. Elder Jamie Washington. Going to throw some loves and hearts up. We're going to get them on right now. Oh, there he is. There's one of them. There's one of them. Oh, and there he is.
All right.
There he is. There he is. Oh, all right. We are all here. Come on, Pastor. We see you. We see you. What are you doing?
Ah,
Hey, guys.
hello. How you doing? How's everybody?
Real good. Real good. Welcome to Refuel Fridays. What a blessing it is to have you all with us.
It is so great.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, Bishop, go on again. Say that again.
Look, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes. So, yep, I'm going to tell, I am by myself today. So I don't know what y'all going to do with that Reverend Robinson, but I do want to put it on record that he is not here tonight.
Yeah,
and
it is on record. It is on record. And I am keeping track of.
Thank you.
All of his disappearing moments.
See, talk about the disappearing moments. Yeah. We are again so grateful to see you both. And so You all have seen us for several weeks. Even by myself, I still will be myself. And so I'm inviting you to a space of comfort, a space of just being yourself. We just want to have a conversation. We do have folks in the chat, so we'll be addressing some of their questions. And we're just here to have a good time, okay?
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds like
So Kimberly, nope, I'm gonna mess with him. We want to thank our media team. Brother Ashton is in the background running the show, and so he's gonna keep us connected. Reverend Offer said, "Love keeps no record."
You know, right? See, this is the problem. It's a problem. This is the problem. I'm not going there with him.
Okay.
Today.
You got something for that?
I got something for tomorrow. I'm gonna let it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep a record tonight.
Look, I love babies, so I done have one growing up, so I know about babies. But you got two of them.
Yes.
So you got double trouble.
Yes, double trouble. It was Reverend Offer that said, "Love keeps no record." So he's talking about us holding Reverend Robinson accountable. Casey, I'm sorry, using your government name. Okay, so guys, your theme, men of hope, love, and action. So why don't you tell me how did you all come up with that thought for this month?
I'll go ahead and start, Bishop, in that one. So one of the things that we've been certainly paying attention to is, just kind of how we're moving through the season, right? How we're moving through this time and season. We had in June, right, a series of conversations and sermons, that, started with, okay, so here we are now. So how do we hang on? We had we kicked it off in the spirit of hope, right? And not to lose our hope, right? And then we went through the month with some very powerful messages around staying in it, right? And then I think the piece that really solidified the theme for us was the transition of Minister Butler, right? And being really clear that he was love in action, right? That he was very much love in action, and that we were holding how we remain in hope, and again, he absolutely remained in hope, right? Throughout the whole time, and continued to stay loving. And so it just felt right as we honor him during this, Men's Month, again, for folks who know that whenever you lose someone on this side of eternity, and they transition to the next realm, the first year matters, right? All the time matters, but the first year really matters. So the anniversaries of, the first time this is without, the first time the birthday, the first time this is the first Christmas, or this is the first Thanksgiving without, particularly if they had significant roles in those spaces. And for us, Minister Butler was significant in the men's ministry. And so this is the first men's ministry, Men's Month, that we've had without him, right? And so his energy was clearly in us as we began to think about. So love in action and maintaining and holding on to hope is where that came from for us.
Nice.
Yeah, and definitely the fact that he was one, we always called him Superman because of his ability just to stand out and do the work, without complaining and all. Even when he was challenged with his own health concerns, he was always there for everybody. Even including me. And most people would turn around and say, yes, because of the fact I was a pastor. But he was one who would actually be open and honest and tell the truth when it was one of those times when it should have been said no, he will tell me no. And now, so I appreciate the fact that he was truly a man after his word. And we miss him.
Amen. Amen. It felt right. The
Mhm.
first year mattered.
Mhm.
Superman, right? A man, he was there for you all. And so
Mhm.
we're holding the men
Mhm.
of UFCB as you all navigate this first round
Mhm.
Yeah.
without your Superman,
Mhm.
right? And so we breathe with you all. And so with that, Black men lives matter. You talked about the loss of a great Black man,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we also know we've had the loss of many,
Mhm.
Black men
Mhm.
to to racial injustice, to police brutality, to just natural causes.
Mhm.
And so, what does what does Black men lives matter mean to you, Bishop? We'll start with you.
Okay. It means a great deal to me because one, I'm a black man and all, and no matter what happens, I can't change my color or what people think about me. We can send them through different trainings and so forth, and it may in their mouth say the right thing, but in their heart, will react to what they actually feel. So for as a black man, I realize that I have to be very careful of what I do, what I say, especially when I am working with a police officer that within his heart really honestly believe that I'm dirt, I'm nothing, and is willing to do whatever he can to put me in a situation where he can take advantage of.
Hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. I think that as we whenever we say Black Lives Matter, often we are paying attention to because of media and because of sexism and the patriarchy. We do see what happens and the damage that's done to Black men in a different way. And so I just want to name that in honoring of all of the Black women and cis and trans women that have also experienced, in particular, um, loss of life and mistreatment, due to systemic and racism and sexism and so on. At the same time, as I say that, I do want to honor the truth of that for Black cis and trans men as we navigate the world. Um, we are always having to pay attention to how we show up, right? And so when we talk about those lives mattering and we talk about those lives being lost, it's not just about the criminal justice or the legal or the law enforcement systems. It is also about the way we get seen in corporate America, about the way we get seen and treated in education, right? And you'll note that, when we talk about the lives of Black boys, that what is critical is that as early as the fourth and fifth grade, once they get tracked into problematic areas or get seen as problematic, that sets the trajectory for their lives,
Hmm.
right?
Mm. Right.
And so, uh, as we talk about Black men were first Black boys, right? None of us spring forth full grown. And so, understanding when we start to um, send Black boys the message that they don't matter, or that they are disposable, such that the work isn't just as we're doing the Black Lives Matter. It's not just telling the world; it is also telling ourselves,
Hmm.
because one of the most painful things is when we don't believe that we matter,
Mhm.
right? And then how we show up, not only treating others who look like us, but how we treat ourselves. We don't see our own lives as mattering. Um, and so when I think about this whole this whole moment of, just paying attention to Black Lives Matter and what that means, particularly for Black men. I feel it's critically important for us to be in a space of affirming each other and ourselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. I can't change my color.
Mm-hmm.
Pastor, you framing the 4th and 5th grade being kind of that moment or that turn, it is very interesting to me, how we show up and what we tell ourselves. And so from your perspective, either of you can answer this question. How does racism affect our community? So we can talk from Black, we can talk from LGBTQAI, in your experience.
Well, in my experience, I was raised in Philadelphia where we really didn't have as much of this to expect because, in fact, we lived in a very integrated neighborhood. But once I came to Washington, it was right there in my face. It was a lot of times when I went into stores that, people followed me around. People would ask me what I wanted. They were very present in my face. One of the things that I look back that, during the riots, during Martin Luther King assassination, and I see where there's a lot of folks that still think that because of the election of Obama, that President Obama, that everything is over. That we should be jumping and hollering because of the fact we've arrived. And the reality is that no, we haven't arrived yet. We're still fighting a fight that has been going on for years. From the Black Panthers on, that we continue to see a struggle for us to get our rights. I mean, voting rights has been an issue. All of this, everything that we look at is always a situation that we have to stand up for ourselves. As Elder Washington was saying, teaching our youth, our young folks, in these challenging times, not to get out here and, when you're confronted by a police officer, what do you do? How do you handle that? Especially if it's at night when there's nobody around. How do you handle that? How do you deal with the fact of how they're treating you, and doing the wrong thing at the wrong time could cause them to go off? So I think that it's very important that we realize that, and we continue to teach that to our Black brothers, and that we study to get to understanding of what all of this is about. The worst thing to do is to try to teach somebody about what you don't know.
Ooh, that's good, Bishop. And you talked about the voting rights, and yesterday was the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, right? So, right. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on, Pastor.
No, I'm sorry. No, I just definitely agree as you're talking about kind of as you name the voting rights, as you talk about all of the ways in which we get to, kind of navigate and to show up in the world, and what's the messages that we've got, what did we learn about how to be ourselves, and how we learn to interact with others like us, and how we learn to interact with others who are different than us. I think as I think about my own journey, my understanding about race was couched in my Christian experience very much, and so because similar to Bishop, I was raised in the North, and because I was raised in a community that was 98.9% Black. I saw one or two other than Black people in my experience, not in my community, but for the most part, I was in an all-Black community. When I saw people other than Black, they were at school, and mostly that was white Jews who were the teachers and the counselors in the urban inner city school system, and those were the ones who with the best intentions, were the ones who understood the Blacks, and they were going to come and save us and take care of us. And so more often than not, white Jewish folks were in the space trying to do their best with good intentions, but there's, a long history of exploitation that has happened in that way as well. But that's the whites I knew. And so I knew nice white people, right?
Okay.
Right. And so because of my Christian upbringing, we are all of God's children. They're good people who are good people, and there are people who are bad people. And, the bad people are just operating out of their sin and they just need to be prayed for. There was no talk about the history, chattel slavery and enslavement meant, the impact of that. I mean, yes, it happened. We knew it, and it was wrong, but it was over, right? So we should be, we free now. We's free now, so just go on and be free, right? No understanding, no framing, no discussion of how, in fact, the residual impact of that process lived on in us, in our communities. It informed where we could live. It informed why I lived in a 98% Black community. I ain't know that. I just thought Black people, I just like to live together. So there was not an understanding of redlining. There was not an understanding of what that meant in terms of the books that we got in school, with the kind of funding that went to our schools. None of that was talked about, right? It just wasn't talked about. And, and did not necessarily see law enforcement in, as, kind of abusing power. We just saw, policemen are doing what they do. We were careful and didn't necessarily trust them, but we just didn't have, I did not have an analysis that was about systemic racism.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It was really much more about nice people, individual person. All y'all just need Jesus, and if you just get the Lord in your life, and then you'll show up right.
If you just get the Lord in your life,
you'll show up right.
So, Pastor, you named redlining. Would you take a moment to explain what redlining is to our guests?
Well, and again, as we talk about there were places in which we could live that impacted property values, that impacted whether businesses would come in to those areas, right? And that again then impacted what that meant in terms of because as long as school systems were informed by the values of properties and what the resources that folks had, all of that impacted again the education and quality of life of folks within particular communities. So there's lots of great work out there that explains redlining and how redlining is still alive and well. It's not gone.
Very much so.
Real estate agents, would direct people of color into certain communities and direct white people and particularly Black people in certain communities and white people in another space. And all of that mattered in terms of what our communities ended up looking like and what kind of care we got and so on and so forth.
When I first moved into the area that we're in now, this was predominantly Black. And the school that was here, it was closed. Then when they started building these condominiums that was costing between $100,000 to $200,000, we started seeing the demographics of this neighborhood. It immediately started changing. Then the school that they had closed, they reopened it again. But again, it's one of those type of situations where everything in the neighborhood started changing. Most of this now, people that were getting old, they tend to lose their houses because of the fact that taxes started going up. So people were moving into areas that had the money and the influence, and they tried very hard and have succeeded in trying to change the very image of this neighborhood. You know, we even have cameras that we didn't even have before. Cameras are up. Police, we've seen them more around here, and they're sitting in cars across from neighborhoods that are still, are still predominantly Black. You know, the underlying housing that they're in, where low housing income folks are in. Police are sitting there just to keep an eye on us.
Wow.
You know, but they're not in the white areas or near the white school and all. So it's one of those things where we definitely have to pay attention to and recognize, what are we doing in our community?
Yeah. What are we doing in our communities? There's a it's a game, but at my job, we had a young lady come in and we did what's called factuality. And it's a 90-minute crash course on the structural inequality of Maryland, of America. And it's a very interactive way to talk about some of the racial bias, gender bias, class, sexual orientation. And it brings it down to a very kind of surface level. And what she does is she encourages you, if you just so happen to pick one of the people name is Mason. If you so happen to pick Mason and you feel like you identify, you need to switch to go to maybe a Brian, who is the kind of collegiate white guy. But again, I invite you guests to check it out. It's a really good way to put into perspective what our pastors are talking about. So we have some questions. We have a lot of questions. John, it's good to see you. Darcia, it's good to see you. John Goodwin, John Mill. Hey, John Mill, we work together at Dell. Good to see you. Mother Emily, we see you. Maritza, love you all. Okay, so John Goodwin. Hey, Tracy, good to see you. John Goodwin asked, how has Bishop Rainey Cheeks impacted your life personally and in ministry?
Bishop Cheeks was the first pastor that I was under. When I came to the movement, one of the reasons why I left my former church was because it was not acting in the community. Mostly what you heard, as Elder Washington was saying, they preach the same thing, have faith, believe in God, trust, and everything is going to change. You live a life and love everybody and everything. So everything was this external stuff. When I grew tired of that and decided, okay, it's time for me to get into something that was more progressive, I started with Bishop Cheeks. Now, I'm going to be point honest. At the very beginning, he scared the bejesus out of me. I mean, some of the stuff that he wanted us to read, and I remember the time that was reading one book, and Bishop Rawls was with us at that time, where we looked into it, said, "This is not God." And
that's very negative to how I felt when I got under you, Bishop.
He was like, really, I mean, he would get there, and he was a great teacher. I mean, great motivator. So as I said, I appreciate everything, and he's still in my life, even though he's no longer part of the movement. He's still in my life. We have great conversations. He certainly is a good mentor, along with the Archbishop and Senior Bishop and Bishop Hollins. He's still a great mentor to me. He continues to make me stretch. And that's one of the things I love about him. He really makes you stretch to the point where you feel like at sometimes that you may be breaking. But in the very end of it, you're like, oh, now I understand it. Now I appreciate it more. So yeah, he is a great friend. Great.
Well, my early interactions with Bishop Cheeks was as a mystic, right? And I didn't know what a mystic was, right? Or didn't know what it meant to embrace mysticism in Christianity, right? And to be able to show up in understanding the mysticism of Christ, right, of Jesus, and how he showed up in those ways as well. And so my own experience with Rainey is that he helped me to begin to see God anew, right? And not just in the box that I had God in, or Christianity in, or religion in. And one of the things that I experienced in his power is he's a powerful questioner. He asks good questions that make you have to go, and so the discovery, the exploration of why we believe, why we think what we think, why we behave in the ways that we behave, why we're invested in holding on to what we, as Bishop named, that ain't God. Yes, it is. And so if God did in fact create everything, so how can anything that we're talking about not be God, right? So he just invited me into some ways of challenging my own thinking and ways of knowing, that then gave me the tools that I would need to help others on the journey. One of the powerful things about Jesus, I believe, as we think about him as a powerful educator, preacher, minister, was that he asked good questions, right? He didn't answer everything. He just asked, well, is there anyone still here? So why are you worried about that? Who is without sin, let them cast the first stone. Is there somebody here who doesn't have any sin? You all, if you do, just, I didn't answer anything. I just asked you a question and let you come to that answer and that knowing for yourself. And I think that's one of the powers of Bishop Rainey Treeks.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go stick to our questions because they're valid and the people have asked them. But I love how, and Bishop, I alluded to this. So how you all, I've never studied under Bishop Cheeks. I am grateful for his legacy because I get to study under you two. But what you mentioned tonight is very indicative to what I see in you all, right? And so Bishop, how you talked about some of the books, some of the questions that he asked you, and it took me right back to 114 Reed Street, sitting in that sanctuary where you would ask these questions, and I would, in my good little Baptist self, be like, where am I? And present day, Pastor Washington, not just answering my question, but following up with the question to make me ponder and think. But that is one of the most beautiful things I find about Unity Fellowship Church of Baltimore. And so we talk about, we practice what we preach. And I know that is because of the foundation. Both of you all have mentioned Archbishop Carla Bean. And that is because of that foundation. That is because of influences such as Bishop Rainey Cheeks. And so thank you both so much for answering that. So Reverend Offer gives us a question. Many Black men have not been afforded or have not taken advantage of spaces that help us understand race. How do we raise awareness among our Black men about the dynamics of race/racism?
Do that one more time. Reverend Offer can be a little bit verbose.
Wordy on that one.
And we just want to make sure that all the people in the space understood what his question was.
All right. All right. So
it might be in parts.
So basically what he's saying is many Black men haven't been afforded there's the question right there. Haven't been afforded or have taken the opportunity or have taken advantage of the opportunity of spaces to help them understand race, right? And so he's asking how do we raise awareness among our Black men about the dynamics of race/racism?
Well, so now, thank you, Reverend Offer. It actually is a really good question. And I can relate in very real ways as I think about, so most folks, who might be experienced, who know me, that if you see me, that that, kind of my race lens, my race consciousness is a part of the central to my being and knowing, right? Again, not always, right? So I didn't grow up with the strong race consciousness analysis, but it is clearly who I am today and, pretty much have been for the last 30, 40 years. And so in my family, so I'm the only Black man that was born in the immediate Washington family during my generation, right? So there weren't other Black men, but but the next generation, my sister's children, all, and even my own adopted sons, all are boys. They're all boys in the next generation, right? And I would say that it wasn't until I remember my nephew and the one, who got to, who graduated high school and got to go off, the two of them got to go graduate high school and got to go off to college. They began to experience these things. One of them was working in corporate America somewhere, and he was having all these things happen to him and come at him, and and he said to me one time on a telephone conversation, as he was just kind of lamenting what the challenges were. He was well into his 30s by the time, and he says, "Unks, do you think that could be about race?" And I about fell on the floor. I about fell on the floor. I'm like, "What? Are we not? What do you mean? Do you think that could be about race? Of course it's about race, right?" And so what I realized as well is that you can go through life, and if you don't get in the right circles, in the right places, you can get seduced into believing everything is about you as an individual and what you do. That is how systemic racism stays alive and well. We get seduced into believing that all of the kind of challenges, the ills, the dynamics that happen are about our own individual behaviors and responses. That is not to say I'm taking away from individual responsibility and accountability, but that is only one piece of it, right? And that we must be willing to acknowledge that 400 years of chattel slavery and enslavement has an impact, and it is still alive and well today. And so, as Reverend Offer asked, how do we get people to see? I think that this kind of dual pandemic moment that we're in. So the pandemic of COVID-19 and the pandemic of 1619, right? That 400-year pandemic that we have still not found the cure to.
Wow.
Right? That we're still looking for a vaccine from. And many folks, like some leadership, trying to pretend like it doesn't matter and it's not real. Thus, we just continue to just kind of go along and let's just get back to business as usual and back to work. And that same dynamic is happening. Okay, George Floyd, another Black man has been killed. All right, we know it was bad. All right, let's just get back to work. Right? And do what we need to do. The only way to, or what I believe is one of the ways it's important to help folks is that we have to take advantage of the moments, right? And we've got a moment right now, right? To and I think lots of it's happening. Netflix is doing it. HBO, lots of media places are doing it. All of BET is doing it. They're doing all of these opportunities for learning with folks who might not go to a learning space, right?
Okay.
So you have to go to where people are to help them learn. And I think that's some of what's got to happen. And so in the church, we got to be talking about this stuff. We can't just be on our way to heaven and so glad, right? We got to be that's one of that's a main place in the media, right? Certainly in our school systems and so on. So we've got to go where the people are.
We got to go where the people are. And you're so right, Pastor. After George Floyd, a lot of companies did come out with public statements, right? And I think it was the owner of Amazon got a lot of hate mail and tweets about his stance on Black Lives Matter and featuring, I think Amazon Prime featured kind of a day where they only showed Black stuff. And I think Netflix did something similar. And so, taking advantage of the moment, beautifully done. Bishop, did you want to offer anything or shall I go?
Yeah, I think it's also the point where, again, as Elder pointed out, it's who we have in our circles. Who have we invited in? Who do we allow? There was a poem that I read about who do we have in the front row of our theater? And if we invite folks into our theater and put them in the front row that has nothing to do with our betterment, then we have to look at that. One of the things that I had actually thrown in my face one time is when I started working at Wilmington and Pickering. And I don't mind calling them out because they done changed their name now. But when I started working, I was out and I called back to the office. And my boss at that time turned around and said, "Oh, boy." And I'm like, "Boy, who are you talking about? What, she, I'm sorry." She apologized so many times behind it. It made me feel even more uncomfortable because of the fact you said it already. It came out of your mouth. It's already happened. She took a very, use of her power to try to diminish, us as Black. So it was very much in how we invite people in, who do we take into our internal circle that help us out. And we as Black men, we sometimes have to, talk when we don't see us at the table. If everybody is at the table but us, we ought to be speaking about that. We ought to be saying, where's the Black folks? You're talking about a Black issue and you ain't got us in the table. We have an issue with that. Or you talking about, police brutality against Black folks, then we need to be talking about that. We need to be at the table and we need to make sure we are. And if we're there, we need to look around the table and say, we need to bring more Black folks into here because we alone can't do it. We need to bring the voices in, and the only way the voices are going to come in is they are educated with our history and what we've gone through to be able to stand there.
We need to be at the table, and we saw a lot of that. A lot of celebrities spoke out about that, right? What's coming to my mind right now is he wasn't a Black man. I actually don't know. I think he identifies as a Caucasian man, but Serena Williams' husband stepped down from his seat at Reddit and encouraged them to hire a African American to take that role. And there have been other people who have spoke out against not seeing any culture at the table. And so we have a lot of questions. Trustee Debbie Dunn, Deacon Cynthia, and Sister Tracy put in questions. I'm gonna get one more question around kind of the overwhelming racism, and then we're gonna move into, because Trustee Dunn's question ties in COVID and which both of you have kind of alluded to, and Deacon Cynthia her question is directly about our current administration, and so we'll talk about voting, right? So Sister Tracy asks, How do you translate this information to a 12-year-old without overwhelming him with all the negativity going on?
That's very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
The parenting of a Black child, right? And I think that our generation, that my parents' generation, were challenged without having resources to know how to translate to us. So we often just, we were respectful, we were good Christian people, and we didn't necessarily need to talk about race. We was all Black, but I tell folks all the time, no one had talked to me about anything as it relates to race. And then when I went down south to my grandparents' house, which I did every summer, and since I thought that we was just all, God's children and everybody was just fine and nobody, I don't know whether my grandmother assumed that, grandparents had assumed that my mama had taught me some stuff or not. But I know that when I went as a 10, 11-year-old into the church, which was the white church, and just went over and played they had a little piano. And I was like, oh, they got a nice little piano. I'm going to go play the piano. The church door was open. It was it was the house of God, right? and there was two white people in there and they saw me and they just smiled. They didn't say nothing. Then I left and I got back home. And before I got home good, my grandmother had left the beach where she was taking care of white people's children and cleaning houses as a domestic, and had to make sure that I knew that wasn't a place that I could go.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So I don't think that we were equipped with how to talk to our children about this. And so I know that my parents and grandparents, I believe that part of what was in the way was they didn't want to overwhelm us. They didn't want us to live in the world they wanted to believe in the we have overcome or we shall overcome. And, that racism too was just about bad people doing some bad stuff. But now the law has changed, right? Now it's 1970, right? And we got the Civil Rights Act and so on. And so there was no classes, right? How do you talk to your children? How do you teach around this? And so, and I think that's still very real today, that lots of parents don't know how to be. And so just like Reverend Offer asked in his question, how do you talk to Black men who don't access or don't know where to access or don't, as Bishop said, they don't have the circle? You have got to go where the people are. And this is a very powerful question that Tracy raises. So where is that being talked about in the Black community? Right? So are our churches holding spaces for raising Black children in the context of systemic racism being alive and well? What does that look like on our talk shows and television programs? Where are we getting the support to be able to know what to say, how to share without overwhelming, how to offer reality without diminishing hope, right? It's both and, right? And so, and as I think about that precious 12-year-old she's talking about, who is my heart, that 12-year-old boy has the body of a man, and he is at risk because folks see big Black boys who are just boys as still a threat, right? And so it is critical that we are communicating with them the importance of how they navigate the world without making that about the world all being horrible, but there is a reality around racism that exists in the world. So there are some good resources out there, and I just welcome the opportunities for us even to be in further conversations about parenting, particularly of teenage Black boys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that for me, I've been saying, because again, in Philadelphia, we was integrated and so forth. The one thing my mother made certain we knew, if nothing else, don't let anybody call you out of your name or call you at the N word.
Mm-hmm.
Period. If that was the case, you know, she was very strong on that. That nobody, don't accept it from anybody, no matter what the case. You stand up for yourself if somebody uses the N word towards you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So creating the space to dig deeper in this. And so beautiful question. Thank you so much, Tracy. And so Trustee Dunn, her question is around overall. So she says, I have many trans masculine / non-binary masculine patients that are struggling, trying to find support and not feeling supported by their communities, churches, feeling invisible. And now with COVID-19, are feeling very isolated. How can UFC be supportive? This is a serious problem. Black trans masculine lives matter. And so we've been in this pandemic since March. It feels like forever.
Yes.
And so what do you all say as spiritual leaders? If she were to show this to her trans patients, what do you say to them in their feeling of isolation, feeling invisible? What do you say to them as pastors?
For me, again, I think that it's very important that we show that our community support them. I often hear, you know, people talk about LGBT, but they leave off the T. They don't want to. It's not invited into the conversation, and we need to change that attitude. We need to change the dynamic, because we, you know, the LGBT LGBT community, a lot of times we sort of in our own way, not really supporting our own. We don't support, you know, a lot of gay men do not support lesbian women. They're not there for that. They are not supportive of I've heard people say a lot of times that bisexual persons are confused. They need to be able to choose between one or the other. So when we get to a person who is either trans or, you know, they also talk about the illusionist and so forth. The reality is that we need to be supportive of them in all ways. And as a church that was founded as a social justice ministry for the LGBT community, our voice is very important. Our voice to be there. Our Archbishop goes beyond, you know, above and beyond to make sure we and our ministry are supportive and being able to reach out and to let them know. We need to understand, even if it means to learn, if it means that we need instructions, if it means that we need like somebody like you know, Debbie to come and sit down with us. She does that at convocation. We need to be in the class. We need to understand it more. And once we understand, once we can then be able to understand what they've gone through, you know, we're not walking in their shoes. We need to understand that. We need to understand them, and we need to be able to invite them in a way that they understand that we are there for them.
Yeah. I think that as Bishop named, there's so many pieces around learning and education. One of the challenges with any dealing with and engaging any area of oppression is sometimes we assume that just because you've had experience in one minoritized identity that you get everything, right? And so that, how can Black people be homophobic? How can gay people be racist? And so on and so forth. So there is this misnomer that minoritization or prejudice or oppression in one area has you automatically, get it in other areas. And so I think that one of the main dynamics is cisgender privilege is a real thing. Right. And so for those of us who navigate the world, having been assigned sex at birth that we feel is in alignment with who we are, that there are ways through which we walk through the world, unaware, unconscious, with attitudes and energies that have us be right and others not, and anyone who's not that be different and wrong. And so that's a very, very real thing. And particularly for as we look at gender identity and we begin to speak about the experience of trans folks, often within the community, while certainly the harm that's done to trans women of color, particularly Black trans women, is real and is out there. That's the only trans folks we really talk about, particularly in the Black community. We don't talk about non-binary and transmasculine folks. We don't. That there really isn't a whole lot of a platform for that. And so when trans women, particularly trans women of color, particularly M to Fs, navigate their transition, it's to a dynamic that is seen as moving to losing power, right? When F to M's, right, transition, particularly in the Black community, it's seen as a place of gaining power, and that is male power and male privilege. But when it's Black man, when you're moving to a Black man identity, that's a whole nother piece of the conversation. And that Unity Fellowship, like other affirming ministries, have embraced, have welcomed, if you would, but not necessarily done all the work we need to do to be inclusive, right? So we include the T, right? But like many places, we welcome, but we've not necessarily done all the work that we need to do to help affirm and to understand what the experience is. And we have been on the journey, right? And we are by no means all the way there, but we feel it very important. And as a men's ministry, we've got, as a part of our Refuel series this month, cis men and trans men having conversations, because we need to talk about that experience. And we do want very much for our trans and non-binary siblings to know that this is a place where we don't get it all right, but we're willing to do the work. And if you show up here and you identify in whatever way you identify, I don't care what the external body, if your body hasn't caught up to your identity and to your truth, well, it's on the way, right? And whether it gets there or not, however you name yourself is how we will engage and treat you, right? That's what we are committed to. And we will bump, we will mess up along the way, and we will correct and get back and get in line. And so I thank Trustee Dunn for that, because it really feels like today is important for us to, as we are talking about all Black Lives Matter and what that means for specifically for Black men in this conversation, that is all Black men, right?
Beautifully said.
Black men. Yeah.
Beautifully said. And what I appreciate, and we are at time, I do want to get the other questions, and thank you all for your time tonight. But what I appreciate for both of you is that you named we're still on a journey. that we haven't figured it all out, right? To be in a ministry that is celebrating in November 20 years, to have our senior leadership sit here, and you could have came up with something and finessed an answer on how we support our trans community. But what I appreciate is you left, there's a seat available. Sister Deb, there's a seat available. Trustee Deb, there's a seat available for us to expound, for us to learn, for us to continue what Pastor Washington has told me, to continue to dig deeper. Right? It was intentional that Reverend Omar was invited this month. It's intentional that the selections of the refuels are what they are. And so thank you so much for your question. So just real quick, and Pastor, we've kind of, Pastor Washington, we've seen you on a weekly basis and you navigating COVID-19. And so Bishop, why don't you share with the folks, how are you navigating COVID-19?
Tired of being in these four walls. I'm ready to bust loose. I'm ready to knock the doors down and run. However, although my doctor has said where I need to be careful, I've actually been tested twice. Once because of the simple reason, and one of them I had a cold, but it scared everybody. Just started to have breathing problems, and all of a sudden everybody gets there. Oh my God! Even my doctor was like, "You need to come in. You need to get tested. We need to know that you're okay," and everything. So yeah, it is sometimes where it is a little scary. When you go out and you see people that are not social distancing and not wearing a mask, and you feel like you just want to go up to them and say, "Put on a mask and keep your distance." But I love it. But the thing is that at least I'm doing my part.
Yes.
I take my health seriously.
Yes.
I wear my mask. I social distance. And if I see somebody coming down the street that do not have on a mask, I'll cross the street. And I'm not going to sit back there and argue with somebody where it could become very violent. Because some folks, when you say something to them, they immediately want to go off. So my thing is that I encourage people to one, wear the mask. I encourage social distancing. We have in the movement as well as in the church, we are having virtual services. It gives an opportunity for us to still see each other, be able to hear a word without leading ourselves into a situation where somebody is going to come back and say, "I caught it at Baltimore."
Right. And so tomorrow, Unity Baltimore is sponsoring Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. Well, they will be talking about the Beta Lambda chapter. Will be discussing methods to cope with COVID-19 through with traditional medicine. And so we invite everybody that's watching tonight, join us tomorrow at 3. We'll be streaming live from our page and from Beta's page. And so 88 days until Election Day.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Bishop, you mentioned President Obama. Deacon Cynthia's question is a lot of young people feel that President Trump is doing it. Let me read it how she wrote it. A lot of young people feel that Mr. Trump is doing a good job. How do we get them to understand that he isn't about all of us? It's not just okay. So it's not just to make them think he's about us. How do we change their minds? So I guess she's experiencing a lot of people, young people in her lens, supporting of our current administration. And so she framed it as, how do we change their mind? Or how do we get this administration to see that our leadership isn't about everyone?
You're talking about a very complex thing, Deacon. And so again, I go back to Bishop Cheeks and Jesus the Christ, in that when we get into conversations around politics, right, and religion, right, stuff that folks are often speaking about with absolute knowing about something they absolutely know nothing about, right? I want you to get that. They're speaking as about absolute knowing. They absolutely know this, and they absolutely know nothing about it, right? So there is a way in which they show up with like this absolute truth, right? And so what is most important in those moments is not trying to show them that your absolute truth is more absolute.
Beautiful.
Is to show up inviting them to talk more about theirs. So ask questions, talk about, so, so are you saying this? Is this what you're saying? Well, how about, what about, and those questions are sincerely to seek to understand how they get to where they are. So it's like, President Trump is doing a great job. Say more about that. Right. What exactly he has done? What are the ways in which you see that is the case? Then to maybe share some examples of what brings that into question for you. Well, right? And then I think the important thing is to not feel like it is your role to convince, convert, or convict, right? That your role is to share your perspective, invite them to look deeper into their perspective. Young people, where the dynamic of age power is in the space. You're not gonna move no young people by showing up, making them wrong and you right because you older and you know better. That has not ever worked, right? You must pay attention to how you just invite them into their own discovery. Read this, check this out, and then leave it as it may.
One pastor beautifully said, "Thank you so very much." Not trying to kind of browbeat that you're right, I'm right, you're wrong, but inviting people to conversation,
That's right.
And so.
Yep.
Very, very, very good. Thank you, Joy, for your question, for your comments. If you teach your children their power, when they experience racism, it will lessen the blow. She also made a comment about pull up the records of the administration, look at the numbers under the Obama administration, under the Trump administration, right? Just because brown and black people are often deferred to be more of the Democratic Party. But if you gotta know the records, you gotta do your research, right? We put it in the chat, the HRC website for Maryland. So it gives you kind of what Maryland supports. It gives you some of the candidates that HRC is backing. It is very, 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 very important that you do your research, that you don't just go off of, well, this is what my mother did, this is what my father did. Please, please, please request, if you are not able to, you're not inclined to vote in person, please do now request your ballots. Must do it now.
That's right.
Do it now. And so we are over time, and I want to be honoring because, Sean will hold this over my head for weeks that I did not keep us to time. But Bishop, Pastor, thank you so very much for coming on to our Friday Refuel experience. Is there anything that you would like to say before we sign off? Before we sign off to everybody.
For me, just as you had said about voting, I think it's very important that we express what we feel and get out, whether it's vote by mail, whether it's in person. Know the person that you're voting for, researching it, understanding it all. Make sure that when you make that decision, that you're making it on knowledge as opposed to the fact of what other people are saying or other people are feeling. Because what somebody else may be saying or feeling, may not be really what you want. You got to have your own education around the different people that are running for office. And it doesn't mean just for president. That means governor, whatever, whoever is running in your particular state. Make sure you know who's running. Make sure you understand what they stand on, their policies, whether their policies are in line with what you believe, and that you know about them enough to know what you personally believe. Don't vote just because of the fact, hey, everybody's voting, I'm going to pull the lever for this person just because I'm old enough now to vote. So people need to do the research and understand the history, of people's voting.
Pastor.
So, I think that, again, one of the things as we talk about all of this, particularly around voting, that there many folks, when you ask folks why they don't vote, they will say it's because it doesn't matter, right? It won't matter, or I don't know enough, or whatever. And so we want to make sure that we're creating opportunities for folks to know enough, right? And to recognize that it does matter, and not voting is voting, right?
Right.
Okay.
So your decision not to vote is a vote, right? And so I often will say to my congregation and the people, if your vote gives you the right to complain and hold people accountable. If you do not vote, don't say anything, right? So you and even if the candidates that you wanted didn't get elected, then you get the right to say something about it.
That's right.
Because I didn't vote for them, no way. And then when the candidate that you did vote for does something wrong, you get the right to say something that's not what you said, right? That had me vote for you. And so now I get to hold you accountable in those ways. No vote, you don't get voice, right?
Wow. So I asked you to prepare for a closing question. And my question to you all is, if you were to meet your 18-year-old self and you were allowed to say 3 words, what would you say? Bishop.
And I kind of figured you were calling me first while I'm still trying to think it and realize whether or not, because I'm sitting here counting. I'm still sitting here and counting. What 3 words? 1, 2, 3, not 4. That's 4 words. I gotta come back maybe. Then that's only 2. Then. So I was hoping that you would call on Elder first, and then
you the bishop. You can drop.
That's great. I'm going to defer and have him go first. I'm taking Bishop's privilege. Bishop's privilege gives me the right.
I respect that. And whatever you say. So there are a number of 3 words that I would say. One of them would be eat more chicken. It's really good for you. But in all honesty, or eat less chicken. And somewhere chicken's in there. As I really thought about it, what at this point in my life, what I would say is to my 18-year-old self is love yourself. Love yourself. And that will make the difference.
Yep.
The 3 that comes to my mind is know your truth.
Beautiful.
If you don't know your own truth about yourself, then anybody can teach you anything. And if you know the reality of you and what you believe and what you stand on, it doesn't make a difference what anybody else thinks or what anybody else says, because you know the truth about you. And you don't have to allow somebody to come in, whether it's the church, whether it's the friend, whether it's mama or daddy, whatever. Nobody has the right to change your truth about yourself.
Very nice.
When you know your own truth, then you can walk in your divinity. You can walk in your power. You can walk in understanding and knowing that just as Elder said about loving yourself, if you know the truth, you can love yourself.
That's right.
If you don't understand you, then you're running into situations that will make sure you fall. So know your truth.
Love yourself. Know your truth. I thought about it also. Mine would be, it's inside of you. So beautiful. Thank you so much. Listen, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for going over.
That was 4 words. No. Just want to know, you're going to say something. You asked us 3.
Is one word. Inside is one word. You is one word. Come on, Bishop. So we got a lot going on this month. We have a lot going on. Let me go down the list. So we are in Men's Month. Men of Hope, Action. Men of Hope, Action, and Love. Sunday morning, Reverend Corey Turner will be our guest speaker. Tomorrow we have brunch with the fellas at 11 a.m. Please jump on the Zoom ID. It's in our page. We'll reshare it out tonight and tomorrow. Brunch with the fellas. Come on and have brunch with us. You'll get to see our pastors again and spend some more time with them. We have at 3 p.m. tomorrow, Coping with COVID-19 with Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. Next week, I believe it is on I don't know the date, but we have our Bishop's Town Hall meeting.
13th.
It is thank you so much, Pastor, on Thursday, the 13th at 8 p.m. Our bishop, Senior Bishop Zachary Jones, Bishop Holland, Jacqueline Holland, Bishop Harris Thomas will be streaming live on Facebook. And I don't know what they will be talking about, but it's time with our bishops. We'll get to spend time and see them all. Next weekend, we have our First Gentleman's Weekend in Baltimore. We will have the guest speech preacher, Pastor Marissa Penderman from our UFC Atlanta. We also have our Game Changers weekend next weekend. Our theme is Rise of the Phoenix. So Saturday we'll have workshops. Sunday, right after Baltimore service at 12:30, we will be hosting our service with our Atlanta church. So be on the lookout. We'll have our flyer out tonight. We love you all. Pastor, Bishop, thank you so very much for your guidance, for your leadership, for your love. We are better because of your yes. Thank
you so much, Reverend Johnson. I just wanted to add, as we were talking about tomorrow for brunch with the fellas, I want to make sure that it's very clear. We want all of our trans brothers, non-binary brothers who feel like they don't have a space to be and hang out and aren't seen. Please join us in that space. Just kind of hanging out with the fellas.
Amen. And it was also important. It is open to all. Everybody join. Come on, have your breakfast. We want to see you, Pastor. Thank you again, Bishop. Thank you again. Baltimore family all over the place. We love you.